Hey guys, welcome back to Nadir Audio. It's been a few months since the last update. In the last one we took a look at a cinder block stereo rack I put together in a house that we were still working on but we hadn't moved into yet. So now we've been in the house for a few months and the music room's been a work in progress, but I've got it far enough that I'm actually using it quite a bit, and so I thought it'd be a good time to take a quick look at the equipment setup and sort of how I've arranged the room for now. So this is part 2 on setting up a new music room. Let's take a look. Okay guys, so here is my main stereo setup. So this room is still relatively small. It's bigger than the room I came from. I think it's about 12 by 15, and then we get a little extra space when we have these closets open to the right. But it's still a little bit hard to get everything in focus as I don't really have a wide angle lens to do that. So we'll just kind of pan around the room before we start going over equipment. But you can see I've got some CDs in here. I've got some of my vinyl in the stereo rack itself. A lot more is still packed up, and so the idea is that these closets over here will be an overflow for that kind of stuff, and hopefully we'll have them nice and organized along with some other music equipment. But right now that side of the room is still kind of a mess. So but the stereo is fully functional and it sounds great. So as you can see, I haven't really done any soundproofing in here yet, but fortunately this room actually sounds better right out of the box than the previous one did, and I think that's partially because of the couch we have in here that I'm sitting on, which I'll show you guys in a second. But yeah, it's actually worked out really well. I did have the carpet from the last room in here briefly, but I feel like it over-deadened the room a little bit. It actually sounds better without the carpet, so that's just something particular to this room. I do think a carpet still is a pretty good way to improve the sound of some rooms, and if you're curious about that, you can see my previous video about it. So if I stand up here, I'll show you. I also have another music setup over here to the left under the window to the outside. So this is basically where I test headphones and headphone amplifiers, and it's also where I mix and master and record music, mostly ambient guitar music. And this is still a work in progress, but I have started using it a little bit and it works pretty well. One thing to mention is I do have this new Emotiva A10 Bass X amplifier that I'm using. So we will take a closer look at that in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. And then if we pan over to the left, I'll just show you real quick that I do have the couch, which is right next to the door to the room, and this is a much more comfortable place to listen to music, but it's also you know, provides some sound deadening that actually really improves the room. This room was very live before we put the couch in, and then its character changed quite a bit. So yeah, let's go take a closer look at the equipment. Okay, so for the amplifier, we're still using our Boyuu Reisong A10 tube amp, which I love. This thing sounds really great, and we are going to be experimenting with some other amps, including the Emotiva A10, but this one is a keeper. I'm definitely going to keep this thing and continue to use it, and it may be my primary amp for quite some time. And again, we're using it with the original KEF LS-50s, which are fairly insensitive speakers. But this combination works a lot better than you might expect, and even going to this slightly bigger room, it's more than enough power to fill this room as loud as I would ever listen to, so that's not really an issue. I think this particular combination wouldn't be great if you had a large room. It just wouldn't be enough power to fill the room with sound. But we are still using our Mitsubishi DA-R20 receiver. Now we're only using this as a tuner. It actually has an excellent tuner built in, which is why I kind of hang on to this thing. And then we're also using it as an analog source selector to be able to switch between different analog sources. And it works pretty well for that, but we're not using any of the other parts of this. We're certainly not using the amplifier, which doesn't really live up to some of the newer stuff that we're using. And then we do have our turntables. So the primary turntable is our Orbit U-turn, and then I do have a backup, which is an older Marantz 6350Q, which I like. But this one sounds a little better, probably just because it has a slightly nicer cartridge on it now. It's an Ortofon 2M Red. Now the placement of this isn't ideal. You may have noticed that it's a little bit close to the speaker, and actually on the LS-50s the bass port is right up here in this corner, which is closer than you'd want to get to something that's sensitive to vibration. But in practice it doesn't, I haven't really noticed any problem. This setup actually sounds great with vinyl, so I'm not worrying about it too much. I was worried about it initially, and actually I have both of the turntables down below where the records are now. But it was too much of a pain to change records. It just made me not want to play records. So I think it's got to be up here where it's accessible, where I want to play them. The other issue we have is we are using a TV in this setup, and it's a little bit closer to both turntables than you like because it is a source of electromagnetic noise. But in practice, it doesn't really affect it too much either. And then the other nice thing, this is an older Sony flat screen. I think I got it in 2006, so it's pretty old at this point. But one of the nice things is it does turn completely off. It does have a standby mode like all newer stuff, so you can enable standby if you want, but the default is just to turn off completely when you turn the off switch, which is nice. So that's what I do when I'm listening to vinyl, and it doesn't cause any issues at all, so we're going to stick with that for now. So I do have some other sources here. So for CDs, we're actually using this LG DVD player, which is also probably about 15 years old, and we're just using it as a CD transport. So we're using the optical out, and we're running that into a Schiit Modi 3. Now we are going to be experimenting with slightly more expensive DACs in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But I do like the Modi 3 a lot. I think it works well. And so you see we've got just a little switch over here that we can switch different optical inputs, which a lot of this older equipment has. So we also have this probably 15-year-old Samsung Blu-ray player that I've had a long time. And we use this for Blu-rays, and you know, we could technically use it for CDs as well, but the problem is that it's one of these old ones that has the front panel that gets pushed out when the tray opens, but the tray has just gotten a little weaker over time, and it doesn't really have enough power to open this thing. It just gets stuck. So if you want to open the tray, you got to flip this down first, which is not a big deal, but it just makes me think that this thing, you know, it's worked. We've used it a lot for 15 years. It's probably time to replace it. There's lots of inexpensive Blu-ray players available now, and maybe I'll get something to replace both of these units. That might be convenient. They may not have an optical out, but I think most things have the coax digital out, so we could use that with the Modi 3 as well, so it wouldn't be a big deal. I have a little Radio Shack HDMI switcher, which we use to switch different video sources to the TV. Now, HDMI carries audio as well, but we're not using that for the audio. We're using the optical for that. And then we also have an older, not too old, but maybe 2014, 2015 Apple TV, which has an optical out as well. And we're using that mostly as a streamer, but we can also watch content with that if we want. And so far that works out pretty well. And then I have my tape deck down here. Now this is an old dual as in the German company that is primarily known for making turntables. So this is a C839RC. This is actually a really nice sounding cassette deck, and you can get these pretty cheap, and it's mainly because they're just not very reliable. This one works, but it does have some intermittent problems, so if I can sort this thing out to where it's reliable, we'll make a video about it someday, but if I can't get it fully up to par, I do have some other cassette decks, ones that maybe don't sound quite as good as this one, but certainly more reliable. So we can take a look at that in future videos as well. But yeah, that's kind of it for the main system. So I've been listening to a lot of, you know, the usual suspects, the stuff that I've talked about in previous videos. But I think in this video I'm just going to show you guys a couple of new music items that I've picked up in the last month or two. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys a couple of albums I picked up recently, and I want to mention this one because I actually bought this at Target. Now, as many of you know, Target and Walmart carry vinyl, but a lot of it's just, you know, really popular or oldies type stuff that you either already have or probably not interested in. But I do always check them because occasionally you will find odd things. So I saw this and I didn't recognize it, so I took a closer look, and I had never heard of this artist before. But when I was taking a closer look, it had some stickers on it which are not on since I unwrapped it. You may be able to see, maybe we can focus on that on the spine, maybe not. Yeah, there's the title, and then if we go over here, you may be able to see that this was released by WRWTFWW Records. That's the name of the record label. It's a label, I believe it's out of Switzerland. And as soon as I saw that, I picked it up immediately because I actually am familiar with them and have bought some of their other albums off of Bandcamp. And it's a lot of cool, a lot of it's old and obscure stuff, but a lot of very cool ambient and sort of avant-garde and cutting-edge type stuff. Yeah, the label stands for We Release W2F We Want, which is kind of funny. So they definitely live up to that. They just will release any random thing that they're interested in, but I happen to find a lot of it interesting too. But yeah, you never know. Target sometimes has these weird things. I've gotten other things in the past before too that they just randomly had. But yeah, for the most part, I get most of my vinyl online through different sources, acoustic sounds and others, Music Direct, and actually a lot of times just direct from artists on Bandcamp. So yeah, I'll mention one other album actually from the same record label that I did pick up, this one on Bandcamp, so I can also listen to it on Bandcamp streaming, but I have this nice vinyl copy, and this is by a French artist named Dominique Guillot. This particular album is called L'Univers de la Mer. And so he is sort of an obscure artist. He recorded a lot of what they used to call library music. So, like ambient or instrumental type music that's mostly for movies or for television. So they used to build up these libraries, so they call it library music. This is sort of an obscure recording. This is, I would say, maybe prog rock with a lot of ambient. It's instrumental, but it's just really cool, really well done, very interesting, very imaginative. So I'm a big fan of this record. I had heard it before, and so I decided to pick up a vinyl copy, and I was not disappointed. It's very cool. Yeah, in the next one, we'll take a closer look at what particular some records sound like in the various setups I have going in this room. But for now, I just wanted to mention two new things that I had picked up recently that I thought were cool. So yeah, I think that's it for this one, guys. Probably the next video will be an in-depth look at the Emotiva A100. So stay tuned for that. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.